Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Human Resources Committee of the Lake Bluff Public Library Trustees. I call this meeting to order on May 2nd, 2023 at 7:03 p.m. Do I have a volunteer to take minutes for tonight? Janie's not here.
Sure, I could take minutes.
Thank you so much, Jenny.
Thanks,
All right.
Jenny.
Yeah.
We'll move forward with roll call. Trustee Graziano.
Here.
Trustee Shaul.
Here.
All right, we do have a quorum of the Human Resources Committee. Thank you both. First, I'm going to move to the review and approval of the minutes from the combined meeting of the HR and Finance Committee. This is the meeting from Thursday, April 6th, with which I have now shared on your screen. You both were there in attendance, so you are able to approve these minutes. So I'll scroll down. Review. Thank you, Jenny, for taking them.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for the pause. I just glanced through them. They look good. So I move to approve the minutes from the joint HR Finance Committee from April 6th.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. The meeting minutes from Thursday, April 6, 2023 of the HR and Finance Committee have been approved. Thank you both.
Yeah. Hey, Renee and Jenny, I propose a small change to the agenda.
Yes.
I'd like to move Jenny's letter to trustees to be the last item.
Sure. Everything
else we have is pretty time sensitive. So if we don't get to that, I think we can roll it to the next HR meeting. Is that okay, Jenny? Any concerns about that?
Of course.
All right, great. Change noted. Thank you, Bonnie. So moving on next to the updated library director job description. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Just a little bit of background. This has been drafted after research of several library director job descriptions. I have access to the Rails Fast Facts survey, and what that tool does is that it allows someone from any library in Rails to answer a question, and that question answered is posted so all libraries can see. And so there were several previous historical Fast Facts surveys posted about job descriptions for library directors, so I was able to have lots of examples on my fingertips. I drafted this description utilizing a document that Trustee Graziano shared with me of my predecessor's time here, but also incorporating the things that I've learned about this position since I started in January. And I also incorporated the job posting that was posted when this position was available last fall. So incorporating all of that information, this is the job description draft that I have to share with all of you. And it also, last thing I'll share is that it matches the format of the job descriptions I've drafted for the managers. And it will be in this format, the same format, for all future job descriptions. So a good example of a job description is one that identifies the status of a job with regards to the fair and safe labor laws. Is it exempt? Is it non-exempt? What class is the job? And for this, I had to create a class system for our organization. We did not have any. And so this class system, as I explained to Trustee Graziano when we met, really helps identify the pay grade. And with regards to other jobs of comparable educational and work experience, it ultimately identifies a pay grade. So 101 for our organization is now shelvers. 102 is associates. 103, we don't have anyone in 103 yet, but that will be our librarian job class, which we will be creating this fiscal year. 104 is our managers, and 105 is the director. So that's just a little bit of explanation about the job class. And then, of course, this position is full-time. So I'm happy to answer any other questions or open the floor for discussion at this time.
So I have a process question to open with.
Yes.
Is the, what is considered the next 2 or 3 steps in finalizing this library director job description specifically? So generally, and specifically, had it already been discussed having the entire board take a look at it, or were you thinking just the HR committee?
No, I think for the job description for the library director, that should be reviewed and approved by the board. The rest of the job descriptions, is my experience, the library director has oversight of the regular review and update of those. And job descriptions really should be reviewed on an annual basis during the time of a performance evaluation. So, as we are talking about a performance evaluation coming up, I would assume at this level, or I would suggest or propose that this group, the job description is reviewed and edits are made, and then it is proposed to the full board at a future meeting for official review and approval. And then I think this job description could stay as it is for the year plus months until my official evaluation for this position, which based on the timeline is the fall. Well, no, that's the 6 month, but it would be based on next spring. So March or April. We could have another review of the job description in the fall if the HR committee or the board or both would like. But I think, a job description is supposed to be evaluated and reviewed to make sure it's an accurate reflection of the work. So annual review seems appropriate, at least for the HR committee.
Okay. Great. Again, I'm just kind of glancing through it, having just finished dinner and cleaned the dishes in between, kind of, running up to the library earlier tonight. But it looks like a really strong first pass. I'd be happy to review and comment on it. Jenny, I don't know if you've had a chance to review it already, but perhaps, the HR committee edits and then it goes to the full board.
Yep, that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I've reviewed it and it looks good to me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'd like some time to think through it. The one thing as I glanced at it, I would like to see a little more in financial management, financial, I'll say dexterity, but it's not like a physical thing, you know what I mean? To show up in knowledge, skills, abilities, and work environment. So that's just one area I know I would like to see beefed up. And once we send it to the full board, there may be others who, like Bill and Matt from the finance committee. So again, I think this is a really strong first pass. Thank you, Renee, for getting this done.
Sure, and if it helps for the manager job description, job descriptions, the knowledge, skills, and abilities section has categories and specifics under the categories also.
Okay.
I utilized what I had, and given the time frame, I thought this was a good start to have at least some discussion prompted. And I agree with you. I think it could be fleshed out more as well.
Okay. Are there any committed timeframes, you've committed to which would mean it would be best if this were finalized by the full board. I'm
think
trying
that-
to back into how quickly do we need to get this in front of the full board?
Soon,
that-
because
yeah.
we have I don't know if you got a chance to look at our timeline, but I think that we need to have it in place by the time we do our review, which we're scheduled to start Renee's review tentatively in August.
Oh, okay, perfect, perfect, perfect. I think our May meeting is quite full.
So full.
Yeah, so why don't we aim to maybe mention that it's coming for June? And then it can be sent probably right after the May meeting if, I'm happy to make edits this week.
That would also allow Janie to participate. I'd like the full committee to have a chance to, as I know all of us would. So I think that makes sense to me. Jenny, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. So Bonnie, you and Janie will do edits this week, and then we're sending it to the full board for approval. Is that right for the June meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I can't necessarily commit Janie to make edits this week. I don't know what else she has going on, but we can ask for that. And if she's not able to do it this week, but maybe next week, I think we're still not jeopardizing anything from a timeline standpoint.
Right,
No,
okay.
and I do think, Jenny, that having the month of May to make edits is really good for the committee. I think the work can happen via email, and then Jenny, you could consolidate the edits into one final draft. And then if we do need to discuss at all anything before it goes to the board, we can have a brief meeting sometime before June 20th. As long as the job description is ready to go by the June 14th, that'll give me time to put it in the packet for June.
Okay. Great.
I think that sounds great.
All right.
Anything else with the job description before we move on? Okay. Thank you. All right, now I'm going to share my screen and just showcase the timeline. Jenny, I'm going to open the floor for you to present this.
Okay, so looking at, this is just a draft of what our timeline would look like in order to, so all of the documents that we're looking at as far as self-evaluations and the evaluation forms. So we need to take a look at those, have those approved by the board, and we also need to upload them to Google Documents. And we're looking at Renee. Okay, so I guess I should start. The process that we were looking at this year for Renee's evaluation, and we promised that we would do a 6-month evaluation in our offer letter. So that's kind of the point that we started from. And so we're looking at starting that process in August so that we can meet with Renee by the end of August. So, so then we're also looked at updating some of the evaluations. So we're looking at 3 different evaluations this year that we were hoping to do for the 6-month and for her annual. Although we won't always do this for her 6-month evaluation because Renee is new, we thought that it would be good to get feedback from staff as well as from the board for her 6 months. So she kind of has an idea, because we won't meet with her again until next April. Is that right, Renee?
Yes, I can pop in here and say the reason the evaluation period is starting so late, it's past the 6-month, is so that we can align with the fiscal year and my basically make sure that my end of performance evaluation process aligns with the start of the new fiscal year 24-25. And in order to do that, we looked at what 6 months from January would be, and given the short amount of time that we even had to get this together, we didn't feel that we would have enough time to create all of these things, present them to the board, and then start a 6-month evaluation and have it done by June. It's already May. So we tried to kind of split the difference in terms of the time frame, and also consider where the trustees might be and their availability. So that's why some of this was pushed off. And then the 6-month evaluation would happen, as Jenny said, in August, and or the proposed 6 months would be in August, and then that she has another timeline for the annual when that would start.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just a quick observation. It would be fairly consistent with my experience that the time, we can say the time frame we're evaluating is really the first 6 months, but the evaluation happens within the next 60 days. So I'm pretty comfortable with that distinction, if you will, right? That we,
This kind of aligns with that,
yeah.
plus or minus a week or two.
Mm-hmm. Jenny, any thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this was a good draft. I tried to get all the different components in there. So I'm not sure that I have everything in here as far as making sure we hit all the points. Because I didn't have anything, sorry, I didn't have notes from last year that I looked at, but, and we also have more components to the evaluation than we did last year. So 3 of the things that we set were a self-evaluation that Renee would do herself. And then we would also have a trustee evaluation for Renee. But before, when we send out the trustee evaluation, we would also have, Renee would already have turned in her self-evaluation to us, so we can share her self-evaluation with the board, along with their evaluation form. And like I said, this would all be done over Google Forms.
Pardon me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
And that's how we did it last year, Bonnie, was over Google Forms. And I think it was the best way to compile all the data from different people, from so many different people. And then we also have an evaluation that would come from staff as well, and managers. So we have 3 different evaluations. But it gives everyone a chance to participate in the process, and it gives Renee as much feedback as possible.
Because this is a 6-month check-in, what do you think are some of the pluses and minuses of doing all staff versus maybe just the managers?
We talked about that, actually, Jenny and I. We ended up just drafting everything, and one of the things that we talked about was, well, one of the things I think is a plus is that my predecessor was here for 10 years, and I think that this is a huge culture shift. So getting staff's input from the get-go really helps create a sense of buy-in in terms of the direction of the library, and builds trust, I think, between the board and the staff, that the board really do see the value in asking staff feedback. I think we could discuss the staff element. Summer is the busiest time of the library. So in terms of capacity, that's probably a drawback. This time frame is not ideal for staff participation, but we took that into consideration too in terms of the format. We tried to make the format of the staff evaluation incredibly easy to fill out, and it's optional. So, just in terms of the questions, staff would be filling out the Likert scale, strongly agree to strongly disagree, and there'd be a couple of open-endeds. Managers could fill that out too, because there is, some variation in their form versus the staff form. But I think at the very least, having managers give the feedback is what I'd like to see for the 6 months. I think it would be really helpful for me.
Will the evaluations, will the staff evaluations of the director be anonymous?
Yes, And so that is in each evaluation. I don't know if this is a good time to transition topics, but each evaluation has a instruction section, which I wrote. And so the one for staff has your identity will not be collected and your feedback will be shared with the library board of trustees and the director anonymously. So I think that's as someone that has filled out many a staff survey, there's always questions about anonymity when giving feedback. So I think that that's really important. So yes, that is included in the instructions.
So will everything be collected in hard copy or it'll be electronic? And how do you keep it anonymous if it's electronic? Because, you know, it has a signature stamp on it if I save a Word document or a PowerPoint or something like that.
You know what? We did it over Google Forms last year. And you don't have to, it's a form that comes to an email address. It's like, it's a form that's through my email address, or we'll have a library, I think, email address. So it's not like someone has to download the form and then send it back. It collects all the data to Google and then it shares it anonymously. Last year, we did allow staff, if they wanted to put their name on there, we put a space for that, but you don't even have to have that.
Okay.
Yeah, and Google Forms does not save IP addresses, so it can't tell which computer, you know, someone is filling it out at, you know, in the library. There's always been, you know, those very cautious staff members I've worked with that have asked questions like that, which are valid, but it does not collect that data.
Okay.
And it's really nice for compiling the data because like for these, it'll tell me, like, it'll calculate how many 4s, how many 5s, and it makes it so much easier than trying to collect all the paper and stuff. It was a really nice program to work with last year.
Good, good. When we ask the staff or the managers to do the evaluation form, I know it's super simple, but I would ask them, like in the email or whatever, that directs them to the link, to like set aside a quiet 20 to 30 minutes where they're not going to get interrupted, so they have time to really think about the questions. Or, you know, I don't know how different this form is from previous forms, but allowing people to get a little familiar with what the questions are. You know, maybe they look at the form one day and then fill it out 2 or 3 days later.
Absolutely. And I would want that. Jenny and I talked a little bit about this already. All staff will be supported to have off-desk time to do this, even if staff do not have regular off-desk time in their regular shift. There are several staff that just work desk. But you know, Jenny and I talked of a couple different ways. A communication that she and I could draft could come from her, and it could be emailed to all staff introducing this. I would want to give staff a heads up once we have a time frame approved by this committee. I'm going to start talking about it in staff meetings so that they know what to expect and when to expect it. I think sharing the evaluation or the link to the evaluation in advance is a great idea, and giving a nice wide amount of time for people to complete it, because some people only work 15 hours a week, other people are full-time. Some people, you know, might be on vacation during this. So yeah, we'd want to set a lot of time for staff to do this. I think that's very important. And it's paid time. They don't have to do this on their own.
Yeah. Thank you. All my questions really have been answered. I think so long as it's optional, anonymous, and easy to compile, we send it to everybody.
I've used Google Forms a lot in my previous jobs. It was our program evaluation form for the whole 9-branch system. And it's amazing what you can do with compiling and sorting the data. It makes it really, really easy. So I think this is a great tool for this.
Awesome.
Jenny, anything else with the timeline or any other discussion?
Well, maybe we could just, with the timeline. So Bonnie, maybe with the timeline, we could do just the same thing. Maybe you and Janie could review and send me edits that you think, so that we can share this with the board in June as well.
Yeah. So the only top of mind question I have on the timeline, which maybe you can answer, Jenny.
Yeah.
Do you know when the Lake Forest, Lake Bluff schools go back into session in August?
I do. Hold on, let me find my phone.
I think that's when more people tend to be in town and having, just making sure those deadlines are, I don't know, it's just like a shift back to more of a routine
We did
than,
talk about how August was kind of a iffy time. So yeah, this is just a draft and proposal.
Yeah, I think it might be the third week in August that they start school.
yeah.
But the
Okay,
nice, yeah, because the nice thing about the Google Forms is that people can really do it from anywhere.
right.
Would they want to do it from anywhere, though, is the question. No, it's right. It's good to bring up, Bonnie. I think we want to be mindful of people's time
Yeah.
off and vacation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's as good a place to start as any, and sometimes it's just a matter of putting a stake in the sand and saying we're going to work against this, and if something comes up and we have to modify it, then we'll, notify everyone impacted. But I feel comfortable saying this is what we can work toward.
We would not be the first organization that had to adjust a director's reviews timeline. And that's fine. The other option is you could always, once the form is done, you could always share it in the same way we would share it with staff in advance. You could share it with the trustees in advance. So not only can they prep, but they can look for certain things as the months go on, as they're trying to assess. So you know what to assess, you know what you're assessing throughout the year.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Moving on then. Are we good to move on?
Oh, can I? So
Yes,
just
please.
one thing though.
Yes.
It would be great though. I do think no matter where we end up with the committee, with the timeline in general, I think it would be great if we all set a goal to have everything be able to be presented to the board by June. So that whether people are away over the summer, we can have everything ready for whenever we're ready to get started. So we don't have to, so I think that would be great because once we approve all the forms, everything still has to be, I have to get the edits and I have to upload it to Google Forms and stuff. So I just would love to make sure that we have everything in place before July.
So then with that, Jenny, once we have the meeting recording up, and Jill does that really quickly, usually the next day or the day after, I can send a link to that to Janie, and encourage her to watch that if she can. And then if you want to set a deadline for the rest of the committee, or if Bonnie and you want to determine the deadline for when to have edits sent, I can communicate that to Janie too. I think it doesn't need to be next week. We've got time. Like I said, as long as I have everything to include in the packet by Wednesday, June 14th.
Okay. Great.
Yeah. Hey, Jenny, there's two small typos here in the form. July 15, just the second sent.
Oh, sure.
Yep.
Okay.
And then just for clarity, May 31st, that's all evaluation forms uploaded to Google Forms, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And now that we are talking, we may want to add a date somewhere in here about when communication will be sent to staff and from whom. So for example, it says HR chair sends LBL director evaluation. Is it to staff?
Well, so last year, Eric sent it out for us. So we shared the form with him, but the communication came from him.
I've seen it done not that way.
Yeah.
The reason is because the feedback is going to the board.
Right.
It will be received by the director, but it's truly the board's ask directly to staff for this feedback. And so
Okay.
and I'm open to whatever the committee decides, but
Yeah.
throwing the library director in their own process of review, I just think it muddies it a little bit, and to show
True.
that it really is outside and I'm not influencing any part of their feedback directly to the board,
Okay.
or I'm not getting involved in any way. You know, so for example, I've worked at a library where there was a third party, you know, an organization who came in to do a very intensive survey to staff about the quality of the director. And it was in line with their performance evaluation goals over the course of 5 years. They were to be reassessed after a certain time. And it was a third party, so that the director wasn't involved, and staff really do appreciate that. So, I mean, you're not an organization, but it's just another process thing that might be something to consider.
That sounds good.
Bonnie, does that make sense?
Yes, yes. Mhm.
I don't know if you've had similar experience in the corporate setting, but or maybe, I don't know if they ask.
As I think about it, when we would get stakeholder input, I think we would normally give a list of names to our manager, and the manager would then reach out and say, hey, so and so's listed you to provide stakeholder input. Could you, if you'd like to provide input, please do so by such and such date. So, yeah.
It also helps build the rapport between the board and the staff too, even if it's just that one level of communication. I think it's positive. All right, so nothing else with the timeline? Okay, thanks, Jenny, for putting that together. There's so many moving pieces. Okay, so next item is a review and discussion of the following evaluation forms. We're going to start with the director's self-eval, then we'll talk about the trustee form and the manager form and the staff form. And I'll just kind of say overall, you know, Jenny was like, we had some really good discussions about what to create and how to create it. And so I appreciate, Jenny, your trust in me in coming up with a form that makes sense, or at least aligns with some of the priorities of the organization. So you'll notice the different categories very much align with the new monthly reports that the board is receiving. So I tried to take some of those categories that are included in the director's report, and because we don't have a strategic plan, you know, whereas maybe if we did, the strategic plan goals might be the categories, but these are just some of the general categories of work for a director. And then I incorporated examples of tasks or functions for each category. And the 4 categories then are represented in all 3 of the different forms, depending on the audience. So we're all evaluating the same thing, or you all are evaluating the same thing, just different, because your roles are different and your perspectives are different. You might bring a different lens to that feedback. And then with the self-evaluation, Jenny shared some, we'll start with that. Jenny shared some really great suggestions to follow the same format as everyone else's, evaluate myself in that same format, and then at the end, include a section where, you know, I'm able to talk about my accomplishments, my areas of growth, overall job satisfaction, which I didn't consider, and I appreciate Jenny putting that in there as a suggestion. And then goals. And we talked a lot about goals and how do we set them for this first 6-month review? Who sets them? How many goals are there? And so Jenny, do you want to talk a little bit about what your feedback has been in our meetings about the goals and how we came to this?
Oh, yes, sure. So how we came to the goals. Okay, so last year, just to give some background, last year, Bonnie, on Eric's evaluation, I know you saw it, but just to as a refresher, last year his goals were all set by the committees. So he had a very long list of goals because there was probably 4 to 5 goals for each committee. So he was evaluated regarding those goals, and then he was also evaluated. His evaluation was not as it wasn't sorted into all of these different categories. It was much more broad. So we didn't have a section on financial. We didn't have a section on staff management. So this, I really appreciate. I know that when we were doing research, there was a lot of different kinds of evaluations. And I think that Renee really picked some of the best places and the places that she thinks really, the categories that she think also really fits the job that we're working with right now. So I think that when we talked about this first evaluation, it was a little bit more challenging to decide. I thought the goals last year were very difficult because sometimes they were committee goals that the committee was achieving on their own. And then, so you weren't always sure where the director was kind of fitting in with helping to achieve those goals. So, and I also think that as Renee has gotten into her job, there's a lot of things that have come up that maybe we didn't, as a board, always foresee happening. You know, I didn't realize there was going to be so much physical plant overseeing and so many of those updates. So we did talk about, and those are committees that I'm actually not a part of. So it would be hard for me to set those goals. So we thought that actually for the first 6 months, it would be good for Renee to give the board an idea of the goals that she's been working on and where she sees us going within the next 6 months. And I think things will start evolving as we start getting deeper into some of our broader goals as the library goes on, and we can always adjust from there. But I also would love for her to be able to set these goals within her 6 month, and then we can reevaluate them at the year or her annual evaluation, because I think it gives her an idea of what we as a board are also looking for. Did that, Renee, did I talk about that?
Yeah, and you know what, I think this is relevant. I'm going to share my screen to show you something. This is a goal that I have for myself, but I think it will manage really well the organization. We don't have a strategic plan, we know this, but we don't even have at this library a history of creating annual work plans. In my experience, libraries have strategic plans that are a little bit more broad, and then in order to operationalize the strategic plan, oftentimes there's an annual work plan. And that annual work plan is very concrete, very task oriented, and it shows what tasks or what specific items are needed to be accomplished in order to support the larger, more broad goals of the strategic plan. The annual work plan is a living document. It changes kind of every year. And this can be very flexible. And this is something I've already created for myself and for the managers based on everybody's performance evaluations. So everybody's performance evaluations, they have goals. Not everybody has historically set goals for staff. And they were all encouraged to do that this year. And so what I really did was I just brought all those goals together on everybody's evaluations, anonymized them, and put them in the same categories as you've seen in my job description, as you've seen in the evaluation form. So these are things that I'm already planning for myself and for the managers and for the organization. So revising policies, creating job descriptions, starting the process of a long-range plan, lots of building and grounds work. This isn't even done. It's just a draft. I'm still working on it. Collections, community engagement, so much personnel work, programs, technology, and so forth. And so I'm going to present this either probably in June. May's too busy, so that you all can see at least how I am working with the team to figure out what our priorities are, because we've not had a good track record in setting priorities. And so this work plan is that guiding document to set the path. And then when new things come in, oh, is this on the plan? No, we have to deprioritize it. If something can't get finished in a work plan, that's okay. You can move it over to the next year if you know the reason why and it's legitimate. But it's really a path. It's really, it's that formative document that helps you determine where you're going. And I think it's really helpful already. I had a meeting with the managers about it, and they were like overjoyed. They'd never seen anything like this before. They really liked having this, and it helps them individually with their own work as well as their team's work. So I share that. I realize that may not have been on the agenda, but I share that to say that, like, I have goals in my mind, and as I'm moving forward in the work, as I'm getting to know the job. And so if for the first 6 months, you know, I set some goals, I'm very open to, even in the future years, like, we co-create the goals together. But even just from my experience here, I've needed a path forward, and this has helped me figure out what to do and where to go.
Gotcha. Yeah, makes a ton of sense, Renee. I do have a couple kind of overarching questions about the various evaluation forms. And
You want to look at one? I can pull one up.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. My first question is about the rating scale.
Oh, yeah.
So I think some people may find it difficult, like 4 or 5, which is it exceeds expectation. Did you consider having discrete numbers with descriptions rather than the 4-5 and 0-2?
Jenny, do you want to talk about this? I know we went back and forth. Originally it was 1, 2, 3.
Oh, yes. Okay. So when I was reviewing this with, it was interesting when I was talking to my husband about his evaluations at his work, because he was a manager before. And last year when we collected data, I thought the rating scale, it was difficult for people to kind of know what numbers to give. And so we really talked about being more explicit as far as the numbers. And what I had talked about with my husband is that he, with his staff, he was really working hard so that people would understand, like, a 3 means that you are doing your job. A 4 or a 5 is really that you're going much farther beyond that, because I think it gives people a better idea of what they're doing well, what they're doing good. I mean, because I think there's this scale sometimes that people, when they're giving evaluations, want to give everybody a 4 or a 5 all the time. But, you know, that was an interesting mind shift for me, that a 3 means you're doing your job, you know, and that is good. And it gives you a better idea of what you're really excelling at and what you could, and what you're doing okay at. So I think we could separate 4 and 5. We could make it more explicit, but that's really why we went to a broader scale, because I think it is important for people to give honest feedback about how they think someone's doing.
Okay, and then I am totally on board with you in terms of 3 meets expectations, very clear here. It sits alone.
Right.
What I hesitate and wanted to better understand is why is exceeds 4-5? Why
Yeah.
is doesn't meet 0 to 2? What I would have expected is 5 is its own description.
Right.
4 is exceeds, 3 is meets, 2 might be occasionally,
Right.
doesn't meet might be 1 or 0, or 5 could be superb, unparalleled, top 10% kind of thing. So I was looking for actually even more discrete
Specificity.
descriptions for each number.
Yeah. Let me
And-
see.
And I'll pop in here too, as you're pulling that up, Jenny. My
Yeah.
experience has been similar to Bonnie's with my review systems. 1 doesn't meet expectations, 2 needs improvement, 3 meets expectations, and then 4 is exceeds expectations, with 5 like greatly exceeds expectations.
Yeah.
That there's
Oh, sure. And I think I thought I must be misremembering, because I thought that the scale I thought it was more explicit when we
no,
looked-
not from what we met last time. You said, let's just go with this and see what the team said. But
Right.
it went from, originally it was 3, 2, 1. And
Yeah.
then you suggested a 5-point scale. And
Yeah.
so then I did, so it's kind of like double-edged sword. Do you give the trustees a little bit of wiggle room to determine themselves what a 4 or 5 is? Or do you very finely scope the difference and then and be just a little bit more rigid in your definition of 4 and 5? I'm used to like a very explicit definition for 4 versus 5, or 1 versus 2 on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah. So like one of the performance ratings that I looked at was, okay, so a 5 is consistently exceeded performance requirements. 4 is frequently exceeded performance requirements. 3 is fully met the expected performance requirements. A 2 would be partially met performance requirements, or a 1 is did not meet performance requirements. But you could also, if we think those are too complex, if those are too difficult, I mean, you could also do a 1, 2, and 3 with 2 meaning you've met the expectations, and a 3 is consistently exceeds the expectations. I mean, I think either one is fine, and I think you're right, Bonnie, that to clarify it, yes, I think that's a great idea.
I think for you all, the question is, how much variance do you want to give the trustees to vote on? If you
Well,
have a
if this
5-point scale
scale-
versus a 3-point scale.
Yeah, I mean, the scale is used for every evaluation, staff, manager, board, maybe even self.
Yes,
So I
we
think
would be consistent with whatever the scale is. We would do it for
Yeah.
all of them. Yeah, sorry, thank you.
Yeah, I would prefer to use a 5-point scale. I think there's like, I would also have trouble being like, wait a minute. Only 1, 2, or 3, like it's just not discrete enough for me.
Yeah. I think a 5-point scale is nice, but
Well,
I
then,
like
just
like
flesh
those.
out. Sorry, go ahead, Jenny.
Oh no, but Renee, what do you have on your employee evaluations? How is your point system explained? Or have
You
done
mean
that
for staff?
for your staff? Isn't that what you meant, Bonnie? That it would be all consistent?
Well,
Would
no,
you-
I think sorry, go ahead, Bonnie.
It would all be consistent for everyone evaluating the
The
director.
Oh, the director. Okay.
Yeah, because I can't even begin to talk about the evaluation staff are using. It's not great. And there wasn't enough time to overhaul it for this fiscal year. So I said, everyone just use it the way you've been using it. And then managers will overhaul the evaluation. It's the same evaluation from managers to shelvers. It does not match their jobs. It doesn't align with the types of work that they do. And so, and there's no job description. It doesn't, it's all interconnected.
Yeah.
The vicious circle.
Yes, yes. So it was like, just do this evaluation this year. But to your question, maybe, Jenny, there's not even a scale on the existing form for employees.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought that scale was nice, the one that had, it consistently exceeds expectations. I thought it was well thought out. But you know what I can do is I could email this to all of you and you could take a look at it. And it sounds like we'll probably need to have another HR meeting, maybe at the end of May or something like that, to discuss all this. And I think, or people could email me their feedback, whichever works best for everyone.
I think if you determine how much time you want to give people for their feedback, a couple of weeks, we could meet at the end of May. I don't know, people are going out of town, or we could look at the first week of June. That still gives us time before the board meeting and before the packet due on the 14th. Do you want me to schedule a meeting for the first week of June then?
Yeah,
I'll
well,
work with you all.
maybe we could send out dates for the end of May and the beginning of June just to see what works for people. But I think that would be great if we could take one more walkthrough with everybody to make sure we got, but Renee, could people email me with feedback? Is that
That's not a violation, no. It's just a one-way communication.
okay? Because what I'd love to do is if I could get the major feedback from people and then I could update the forms and then we could meet one more time about them just to review and make sure we've gotten all the feedback.
That's appropriate. Bonnie, what do you think?
Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. My travels around the world are slowing down a bit after this next trip.
Oh, nice. Oh, you have another trip?
Yeah.
What's your next one, Bonnie?
Mexico.
Oh, yes, that's right. This is the Mexico that should have been multiple times, right?
Yes.
It will happen for you. I know it will.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to like kind of put a final comment on this scale, discussion of the scale, I would be very comfortable with a scale where 3 is meets expectation and then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 are just spelled out what they are.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's great feedback. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I will send a doodle poll out for dates for either end of May, early June. When are you away, Bonnie?
I get back before the 15th of May. It's a shorter trip. For me, it's a short trip.
Well, you'll be back by the other board meeting too, so that'll work out fine. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I think, again, just across all of the different forms in this packet, I think it would be helpful to have a little description of under things like overall job satisfaction. Like what does that mean? If I'm a manager providing feedback to Renee, what exactly does that mean? Accomplishments, what exactly does that mean? I think to me, it means what have I seen that Renee has accomplished?
They don't have that part. That's my self-evaluation.
Oh, okay. I thought it was in every form. You're right. It's not. Okay.
But to your end, to be able to define, maybe we need to define the categories more clearly. Even though we have examples of functions, maybe a definition of each one. What is organizational leadership?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So in the manager's evaluation of the library director, category 2 is relationship with the board. did you consider having that be relationship that the managers have with the director, rather than the manager's observation of Renee's relationship with the board?
So that's a really good question. And I've been in libraries where it's like both or one or the other. I was thinking their relationship with the director in terms of kind of that personnel would be under category 4. But I think that, I mean, this team has a lot of experience going to all the board meetings and being able to observe and see the advocacy or see how things get communicated to the board. Maybe number 2 is not needed.
You know what, though? I really think this is an important, some of these key points are an important thing for the board to know about how, because I do think sometimes maybe you share something with your manager and maybe you don't feel like they're communicating it with the board. And I do think that's important as an employee to feel like your director is letting the board know, and that the board has a good idea of what's going on within the library. I think it allows them a private way to communicate with us about what they're seeing day to day at the library, and if it matches what we're seeing at meetings.
And to that point, I've actually had a couple of my managers say to me, going to the board meetings, because we're talking about transitioning to in-person, what are we going to do? What's the requirement, or what's the expectation for managers in attending those meetings going forward? And we talked through that. But they said they all agree that it's very important for them to be able to go to these meetings, because sometimes, just by the nature of a 40-hour work week, there are things that I'm doing that may not relate to all the managers, or is improved as the communication is. I mean, you'll hear that in the evaluation. They feel very communicated with. There's still things that come up at the board that they may find that I'm working on, that they may not have known. So, and I think to your point too, it's like staff satisfaction. Like, do they feel that they are represented by the director to the board in an appropriate way, or in, an equitable way? I do think they'll have comments about that section.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it'll be nice. I think it'll be interesting that we're starting with a 6-month evaluation for this, because I think it'll give us a good idea of how we can evaluate and update for the annual evaluation. We can see what kind of feedback really was important and where maybe we need to adjust a little bit.
It'll be good process improvement. And that's something we talk a lot about as a management team, just constantly iterating. Yeah. I just want to acknowledge you, Jenny, for putting together such great questions for the staff in the staff form. The section on organizational leadership and personnel management, and you're encouraging a building and ground section. This may not be fully comprehensive, Bonnie, in terms of all the statements, or maybe some of these could be moved around a little bit, or added, but I think those are the important pieces that staff will want to contribute feedback to.
Well, and I really love about these evaluations that it gives us as a board real feedback and a real window to see what is going on within the library, because I don't know that I just would love to feel like we're very connected, and that the staff have a way of letting us know how they feel things are going and how we can support everyone in their growth and what maybe they're looking for. Like I think we had a piece on here about professional development, and because I think it'll help us to learn too more about what people are more interested in, what they're looking for.
Yeah.
More.
Yeah, and I think these are a great improvement and a great first pass.
Yeah.
Really well thought out. And one of the first things I looked for, and I saw it in the staff evaluation, I recommend adding it to the manager's evaluation of the director. And it's the very last question. Anything else you want to provide me feedback on?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jenny, I remember when we had that, I was like, no, we should have an open-ended for anything else because there's always
Right.
something. And I should say too, Bonnie, Jenny and I talked about how managers would be invited to fill this one out and the manager evaluation. I think that they're different enough,
Okay.
and they are employees just as their staff, and as well as the managerial responsibilities that they have, some of the the managing up, the supervisory, all of that. They have more experience with some of the organizational work, but managers would be invited to fill this one out too.
Will that be perceived as having to do the same work twice in some way? Is there?
I mean, I don't know how they're going to feel about it, but I do think they're different enough. All the questions in both the evaluations will be optional. So that Google won't say you can't pass unless you fill out this question.
Yes. And I think at some point last year, if people hadn't provided feedback by a certain date, we just compiled the information and we didn't even know who.
Right.
So, but at least they had an opportunity to do it. And if they chose not to, that was fine. We closed the poll at a certain date and let people know.
I do think it's appropriate expectation for the managers to do both. And even just the one, I don't know what's been expected before, but in my previous manager positions, any type of evaluation experience is helpful, whether it's for the director or for your staff. It will ultimately build their skills in being able to figure out, okay, how do I write a good evaluation question? What do I need to look for in myself or my staff? How can I contribute to my director's growth by sharing this feedback? I don't know whether it's been asked of them before, but I do think it's a helpful exercise for managers.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then we will do that. If there's any way we can combine the links, or, I know that they're going to be sent to a Google form. Maybe the communication to the managers has both links and explains, we'd like you to fill out both of these.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So it's one communication
Yeah.
explaining the two different forms for the managers.
Well, and maybe for our next meeting, Bonnie, I could draft the emails that would accompany these that explains, because I'd like to have those all set too, so we can send everything. So everything's kind of ready to go.
That'd be great.
Great.
Yeah, streamline communication as much as possible, if that's kind of what you're thinking, Bonnie. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Jenny, you are an HR superstar.
Gosh, I've never done any of this stuff before.
After going through recruitment and now all this.
That's so funny. I really, I was telling Renee, I have had some experience in organizations, and I think at a corporate level, sometimes there's always, people have to have their evaluations done because their bonuses are linked to it. And but sometimes I've worked in different places and this is kind of like skipped over. And I think sometimes it doesn't give people an opportunity for like real growth. And it's so important to get feedback from it's so important for everyone to have feedback, because I think it helps us all stay connected. So
I had my review skipped over once as a manager by a director, and I went into my next check-in and I said, are we going to do, I really thought we were going to have the performance evaluation, and they said, oh, you're doing great. You're doing great. And they were new, and I had a previous director, and that director gave me narratives, gave me goals, and I felt less valued as an employee without that,
Yeah.
And so the opposite is true. I think it really helps a person see their importance and their contribution to the organization.
I love that. And it's easy, people see their growth, which is so nice.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. But really, Jenny, this is a pretty big lift, and thank you for all the work that you've done with the HR committee, and just think how much easier it's going to be 12 months from now, right? When we're rolling
know.
into
This is
Renee's 1 year or
I know.
1.5 year, whatever, end of fiscal year review.
Exactly. And I think this is so great. Renee did so much because it's very difficult to find all this stuff online. So I really appreciate all the experience that Renee brings to creating these. So it's been great. And I think our committee is great. And I think it's going to be great working together. Well, I don't know what'll happen to our committee next, but it's been great. I don't know where everyone's going after this, but okay, what is next on our agenda? I'm sorry.
Yes, so I think we're done with the evaluation section. So now we're just going back to Jenny's letter to the trustees,
Okay.
which I can go, unless you have one more thing about the evaluate or anything else.
I do have one more thing about the evaluations. The only thing I was going to ask is, I know we were planning to send all of these evaluations out for the board prior to the board meeting. Do you think that's going to be enough time? Are we actually taking feedback at the meeting, or will people be emailing? How do we get feedback from people? Because that's
At the board meeting?
yes.
So
like
I
if
think
things say we need to add something to their, would we just present these? Because it would take a long time to get people's feedback at the actual meeting.
yes. So I think it's a presentation. My recommendation would be a presentation in June.
Okay.
Compile feedback via email, maybe have a moment of discussion at the July meeting.
Okay.
But you're not sending the forms until August 2nd. So
Right.
you could have a discussion moment in the July meeting for any last questions.
Okay.
Or edits, and then the committee finalizes it, and then you're ready to go for August 2nd. I mean, you may want to set an earlier deadline because that's only a few weeks, because you'll want to create the form and everything.
Yeah.
But I think as long as you tell them what they're expected to do, here's what we're presenting to you, here's the deadline for sharing feedback, and then the committee will finalize the form and process.
Okay. Perfect. That's great.
I don't know if you're necessarily asking the board to change the timeline. I think it's, the committee recommends X. The committee has discussed this. The committee recommends this.
Right. And I think the committee, while the whole board will provide input on the job description.
Yes.
I think the HR committee can say, these are the evaluation forms we recommend for board evaluation, library director self-evaluation, library manager evaluation of the library director, and library staff evaluation of the library director.
Okay.
I don't think we need to get full board comments on the evaluation form, especially since we're going to do this again.
Right.
Within the next 12 months, of the board using the forms. We will improve as we go.
Okay, perfect.
There is some sense into using a thing at least a few times, right? Instead of iterating right away, which we could still do if there's a section that really doesn't work. When I launched various processes at previous libraries, I would say, we're going to live with this for a year. And then we're going to come back in a year or whatever time made sense with whatever process we were developing and say, okay, but if you have feedback, mark it down, save it. And then when we come back to reevaluate, because there's the other piece of then your evaluation's changing all the time. Then there's no consistency. It could benefit from consistency once it's honed. This is a good time to do it after a tenure of 10 years with my predecessor. So, we're kind of starting new. I think it makes sense.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. That really explains it.
So Jenny, should I share my screen so you can
Oh,
cover the
sure.
letter?
That would be great.
You know what? Can you guys maybe tell me a little bit more without access to the recording? I just wasn't clear on how this
Oh.
came up, what the direction was. You know, I was a little like, oh, okay. I wonder what was the genesis of this.
Oh, sure. So this was at our last, it actually wasn't presented at an HR meeting. It was presented at the last board meeting.
Okay.
So what happened was I work at the Lake Bluff Park District, and what it was so nice in the past 6 months, twice, our the board members at the Park District have put on a lunch for us, like for the whole staff, and they also had a breakfast for us, which I thought was so nice, and it came directly from the board. And so I said to Renee, I thought it would be a really nice gesture is if we as a board organize some events for the library staff. That would be something that would come from us personally. And so but instead of trying to collect from various board members or saying, you know, we have an idea to do a bagel breakfast, would people be interested? I thought it would be less invasive and to set up a formal program where contributions could be given directly to Renee so that she could use those contributions to recognize staff achievements and library milestones. And she would let the staff know that they came directly from the board. And then it would be something that we could distribute annually. So when this was shared at our board meeting, we got some feedback. There were some members that thought this was a great idea. We also got some feedback that one, we needed to make it more explicit that it's a voluntary program, that people are not required to participate. And we also got some feedback that to just write a letter to people. And so this was my draft of the letter. So the idea has already been presented to the board. And so this is our second, the second step as far as establishing a program.
Yeah,
So
Bonnie, Jenny's proposal, I even said in the meeting, I put in the chat the link to the recording, which is live, and then I had a copy of Jenny's presentation. So I just put it in the chat for you to review. This is basically what she said in the meeting. Kathy Meyerhoff's feedback was that it was too formal. And I said that was on my end. I suggested we put together a proposal to formalize it so that it was very clear cut what this idea was that Jenny was proposing. Jenny came to me and she was like, what do I do? How do I present this to the board? And since this is a beyond HR committee, this was an idea for the whole board. My recommendation was present it to the whole board in this way and see what the discussion is and go from there. It was not, and I was not involved in any of it. It was very clear that it was from Jenny. And then Kathy's opinion was like, it could just be a letter, it could just be a letter going out to trustees once a year, and then it could be that, as opposed to like stipulating very, procedurally, all of the things. So that feedback was taken, and that's where Jenny put the letter together.
yes, so yes, so yeah, there is a more formal presentation or explanation of it that we presented to the board last time.
Okay, and with hearing that there was, I think, debate and various interpretations about this proposal and Janie not being here, I'd like to table this to the next HR committee meeting. It will also give me a little time to review that board meeting.
That makes sense.
Okay. Yeah,
Janie was at that meeting, Matt was at the meeting, John Heitzelman, Jenny and Kathy.
Was
Yeah,
Matt
and then
there?
you can see all the board feedback too in the
Okay.
recording.
Okay,
That sounds good.
okay, thank
Jenny,
you.
anything else with that?
No.
All right, looking at our agenda, any other business
Yes,
this
I did.
committee?
I did want to connect with Bonnie regarding Kathy.
Yeah.
And I need to connect with Bonnie for a closed session agenda item.
Yes, so is this regarding my my request?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what we can do is formally adjourn and then move to executive session. What
Okay.
I would do is I would make one of you host.
Okay.
So Bonnie, do you feel comfortable being Zoom host?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and make you host.
Hold on, my battery's running low on my computer. Let me also plug it in before we go.
Oh, okay, okay.
And Renee, can I ask you something? When will this meeting be posted? There were so many notes. I like couldn't even get to all of them.
Nope, that's not it.
We generally post the recordings as soon as we download it from the cloud, but the minutes don't get posted until they're approved.
Okay. Oh, well, I just want to make sure because I'll have to review our meeting a little bit to like make sure I got everything.
Yeah, so it would be available, the recording. It could be as early as tomorrow, but
okay.
definitely the next day.
But it's okay because it'll be okay for me to review the recording. I've never done that before, but yeah, I'll have to go back and look at the recording to make sure I got all the notes.
Oh yeah, no, and I think it's really great going forward. I mean, I'll explain this at the board meeting in May, but we're going to continue hybrid meetings. I'll explain how board members can attend meetings by Zoom. There's a certain procedure we need to have. We need a quorum in person, and then people can attend via Zoom after. But we're still going to have hybrid. We're still going to record meetings. So I think that's going to be beneficial for the community too. I think it's very helpful in terms of transparency. So yeah, and then for things like this.
Mhm.
Okay.
So I think, is it Renee? I think we move to go into executive session. You leave and then we move to go back into session and close the committee meeting, or?
Well, but if you're meeting an executive session without me, that's why I'm giving you the Zoom. So
Right.
The process is, and if Jenny's taking notes, the process is we move to go to executive session. We adjourn the public meeting at a certain time, and you can look at the minutes. It has the same verbiage there. And then I will stop the recording, and then you will meet, and then when you're done in executive session, you would start the recording again, and then officially move to close the meeting. So there would be two files. What happens is on Zoom in the cloud, we download the two files from the first part of the meeting and the second, and we merge them. I don't do that. Jill does. She does a great job. So that's how it would work.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good. So
Is there a motion to adjourn the public meeting?
I so move.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second. Yep, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So the public meeting is adjourned at 8:22 p.m.
Okay, we are back from executive session, HR committee. It is 8:43 p.m.
Motion to adjourn HR meeting.
I second said a motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, Jenny, good to catch up with you. Good work on all
Bye.
of these forms, getting ready for evaluation.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'll talk to
will
you
see
on May 15th. Look forward to seeing you then.
Yeah, so fun. Okay, bye.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.